Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thanks for joining us today. This session of Transform Smart Cities and Communities. My name's Colm O'Gorman. I'm a professor in DCU Business School. My area is entrepreneurship. And today I'm MC for the session with David, Michael, Amanda, and Grainne. So as some of you will know, the Transform series is a free online seminar that's exploring the impact of digital transformation on business and society. Since last October, we've been working through a series of sessions. We've looked at health, getting started, future of work, the changing consumer. Today, we're on our fifth set of seminars and we're looking at smart cities and communities. And the focus of this is the impact of increased digital connectivity on both quality of life and economic development in urban towns and rural communities. I'm delighted to welcome David Curtin, CEO at IDR, Amanda Byrne, Acting Director of Services in Wexford County Council, and Michael Drea, District Manager at Gorey District. And they'll be doing a combined presentation. And then for our third presentation, we'll have Grainne O'Keefe, the CEO at Ludgate in Skibbereen, with lots of nice visual pictures, I suspect. Now, during the session, please feel free to send in questions using the question and answer function, so the Q&A function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. And I'll say it twice, but just be aware that the chat function is disabled. Okay, so you can only use the Q&A tab. When we've gone through the questions, the presentations, and at the end, after the three presentations, I'll put some of the questions to the panelists that we have. Okay, so I'm looking forward. And if you have questions, please submit them as we go, but using the Q&A function. Okay, so thanks for joining us. So, and without any further delay, I'll hand over to David. So over to you, David, and thanks for joining us this lunchtime.
Thank you very much, Colm. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to share with everyone the .ie Digital Town program, and I'm looking forward to getting questions, answers, and feedback. So first and foremost, the .ie Digital Town program, it's, well, three components really. So we've got the Digital Town Blueprint and Roadmap. It's a digital readiness framework, which we commissioned in conjunction with Dublin City University. The target audience for that original research is government, local authorities, policymakers, national employer representative organizations, and sector-based membership organizations as well. The Digital Town Awards then is it's going to be an annual awards, and that will be targeted at communities around the country, including SMEs, or looking for invitations really, or submissions from SMEs, schools, colleges, local services organisation, and a very attractive prize fund of €100,000, which we hope will attract some very interesting entries. And the third component is big data. So if I back up a little and just say, who are we? We're not just the registry for the National Registry for .ie addresses. We have other strings to our bow. And the main one in the past is initiatives that we have conducted with businesses and with sector-based organizations. So for instance, we had an Optimize program where we helped individual SMEs to e-commerce enable their websites. We followed that on with Digital Town Initiative, and you'll be hearing shortly from some of the participants in those programs when you hear from Amanda, Grainne, and Michael. And the third string to our bow is the research that we do. So we publish a domain profile report that gives you some details on our domains, but we also look at topical issues. So in the past, we have studied SMEs' adoption of digital, and we published that in an annual Digital Health Index. Last year, we pivoted, and with COVID-19, we did our research on the impact of COVID-19 on Ireland. And that research is published on our website, and I think you'd find that interesting and a good context for what we're talking about today, because it has a massive impact on our plans. So if we step back to the programs that we did, so we'd optimize, and from that we had some learnings then about how would we go about helping to encourage internet usage and adoption and kind of build out Ireland's landscape. And as the National Registry, we felt we had an important role there. So in 2018, we chose Gorey as the digital town. And then in 2019, we chose Sligo. And the idea of that was to try and shine a light on a town's achievements and what they were able to do with digital. How they were able to improve things for communities, for schools, for education, but above all for the people of the town, and how they use digital to improve business and their daily lives. And you'll hear a little bit more about the events that we ran shortly from my colleagues. But we had a problem. We were ambitious to grow the program, but we found that we didn't have enough information on towns. And the academics in the room will know that there's lots of information available on cities and countries. So in Ireland, for instance, there's the DESI, top left-hand corner there, the Digital Economy Society Index, benchmarks prepared by the EU every year. That provides lots of information on components of digital for a country. But there wasn't anything available for towns. So we reached out to DCU, and with Theo Lynn and Pier Angelo at IIDB, we commissioned a piece of research, and we asked them to study the question of towns, not smart cities, towns, and see if they could come up with a way of understanding digital in a town and understanding how best to help a town to improve its digital presence beyond what we were doing, which was just a one-day event. So as a result of the collaboration with Pier Angelo and Dr. Theo Lynn, DCU developed essentially a blueprint and a roadmap for us that gave us a great understanding of what is it that makes up a digital town's readiness. So what are the factors? What are the issues? What are the components? Or as they say, what are the 8 dimensions that you might look at if you really wanted to understand what's going on in a town from a digital point of view? So the framework that DCU developed for us, you'll see here the 8 dimensions on the screen. So you'll see digital citizen, you'll see education, civil society, digital business, public services, and tourism. And the piece top left-hand corner, the horizontal integration, that's when somebody has the initiative, the leadership, and the vision to combine all those components together to develop a coherent plan for a town. And top there at the 12 o'clock position is the thorny issue of broadband infrastructure. So they're the 8 components of the digital town readiness research. And the idea is that you accumulate data on each of those dimensions, and you weight the data, and then you weight the subdimensions. And that gives you then a score. And as you do better in a town, your score then increases and you move out the kind of spider diagram. So you can take a picture of a town and you can see whether they're strong on digital tourism, have they got good connectivity, is the integration really good, where they have a very effective broadband or a digital plan, or a town for the plan for the town that has a very important digital component. So that's how the overall framework is put together. Now, this wasn't just a theoretical exercise, because as we spoke to DCU in the beginning, they made the point that we really should have some exemplar towns so that we can show people that this really is research that can be applied town by town. So what was developed was 5 reports applied to 5 exemplar towns. So we took Gorey as a commuter town, Edgeworthstown as an example of a town in the Midlands, Buncrana, a border town, Boyle, County Roscommon, a town on the western coast, and then Kilrush, County Kildare, a coastal town. So that research has been applied. The metrics have been developed for those towns at considerable pain, but more about that in a second. So that data has been accumulated. It has been, the factors and the scores have been weighted, and a spider diagram is prepared for each of the towns to give them an idea of what their town looks like on a digital blueprint, its footprint. So as we launch our Digital Town program, we want a couple of factors to come together. So we have research, we have empirical research with 5 towns, and then we have the awards. But we don't want those to sit as separate different components. We want them to come together. So what we envisage with our Digital Town program is that we bring the readiness framework and the awards together, whereby we are offering towns the opportunity to enter a competition to submit the entries of the great things they're doing from a digital point of view, and then we will showcase the shortlist and, if you like, show Ireland what those towns have done, those fantastic initiatives that they've done to highlight their digital presence. And really in doing that, we want these two things to feed off each other. So we will have the awards. It will encourage entries, case studies, examples of great things that people are doing, and think in terms maybe of the Tidy Towns competition that started very small, but has grown into something now that individual towns are really proud of and use it for tourism and to attract people to the town as well. So we want that for the Digital Town Awards. That data will feed the model and the framework and make it better and improve the weightings and the calculations, if you like, of the footprint over time. Of course, it's missing big data. The research team at DCU struggled to get official data stats that were granular enough to be able to apply to the town situation. So certainly data is available at a county level, perhaps at a provincial level, but not at a town by town level. So they struggled, I guess, to get the official stats and apply them to the towns, and had to supplement it with a lot of legwork. So that was visiting the towns, going around with clipboards, going into the pharmacies and saying, do you do e-prescriptions? Do you have a website? How do you engage with the townspeople for, let's say, letting them know what's available? And the same with the small businesses, and asking them if they had a website. Do you sell from the website? Do you do click and collect? So all those factors came together, and that was very much with the clipboard walking around the town. So, you know, that's people intensive, and that couldn't really scale out to the country level. So what we want to do is, in tandem with the initiatives, is to have a big data project whereby we will get interested parties to bring their data together so that it'll make it easier for a town to have access to its official stats. So by that I mean, let's say it's broadband rollout, the number of people in the town that are commuting to a satellite town, the size of the households, what sectors they're involved in. So we'll create this picture town by town of their data footprint. And that allows a town then to work on a plan that will eventually be its best digital version of itself. So if you're, let's say, a tourist town, and you want to project yourself internationally to potential tourists, it will say, what are the things you have to do from a digital perspective to be successful as a tourist town? So a great website, the ability to do booking, maybe integrated booking. When you arrive in Shannon Airport, that, you know, you get a train ticket to take you to the town, you go to the amenities, and maybe even you book the amenities in advance. So you'll see how it is inspiring a town to think about the best digital version of itself. So that's our vision for how the Digital Town program, the framework, will come together with not just a blueprint to give a snapshot of the town's footprint, but also then kind of a roadmap. How do I move out that tourism piece of the framework? Or if we have an issue with, let's say, we want to improve the digital citizens and get everybody connected to government services and public services in the town, what are the things that we need to do, the steps we need to take so that we are better for digital citizens in our town? So at .ie, we believe that the time is right for our initiative. This is a clipping I took from the Irish Times last December. Look on the right-hand side. So the state's planning 400 remote working hubs over the next short while. And see the piece that's circled? It says, the key was to make sure we have the right hubs in the right places for the right purposes. So this is the department saying that it needs to identify which hubs are located in which locations to take advantage of locating the hub in that town. And on the left there, you'll see that Ursula von der Leyen, when she visited Dublin in December, said that the EC Commission is going to spend 20% of its 750 billion recovery plan. It's going to spend 20% on digital investment. So what we say is that, the quote from Shakespeare up top, there's a tide in the affairs of man, which taken at its flood leads on to fortune. But we're saying that there's lots of factors coming together. We have the potential for 400 digital hubs. We have the national broadband rollout finally now really getting traction and accelerating because of COVID-19. We have EC funding. We have the government's remote working strategy. We have the government pledging to put millions of euro into the regions and address the urban-rural mismatch of the past. And from our point of view, at last, focusing on SMEs. Never before have we heard so much information, detail, concern about how SMEs are doing, how they're coping, and how they're going to pivot in a kind of a current but post-COVID-19 situation as well. So we believe that the timing is absolutely perfect for this initiative. So thanks for your attention. I'm sure you have questions on that quick run through what our plans are for the Digital Town programme, and I'd be delighted to take questions at the end. So back to you, Colin.
Super, thank you very much, David, and that was very good, and we'll give you a virtual applause. So we might just take a couple of questions before we move on to our next presentation. Can I just ask you one? You mentioned there just a second ago, a town could be a best version of itself, and you're introducing the idea of the hubs, and it's easy to sort of imagine how a hub can be a component of a digital town. But your framework you outlined had these 8 dimensions. So just if you were talking to a town, what's the sort of picture of a digital town? If I'm a household, what might it look like?
So I would say great connectivity is first and foremost. That's the foundation on which other things are built. But that household is able to get online to the school so that at primary school or university, you can connect and over Zoom and get your lectures or your classes online. At the same time, the adults in the room, mom and dad, can do their remote working from home. Currently, they're there all the time, 5 days a week. But in the future, and especially with the government's remote working strategy, it could be a day a week, 2 days a week. But the broadband has to be good enough and solid enough to allow that to take place. Also, online shopping would be a key component as well. So are the local shops online? Are they even advertising their opening hours? Are they doing click and collect? Are they telling you what the specials are? So are the SMEs participating here as well? Then ultimately, I guess you're approaching nirvana now, but can you do an e-consultancy with your GP? And afterwards, can they email the prescription to your local pharmacy? And can you do click and collect from the pharmacy? So that's kind of your integrated picture of a digital town that's able to maximize the benefits of digital.
Super. And just a follow on and a double question maybe. So you mentioned 5 towns that the team in DCU looked at. So a couple of questions in. A few people are curious about why those particular 5 towns. So I'll let you have a go at that in a sec. And then I suppose secondly, what surprised you about, I know you didn't share the data yet, but what surprised you about what came out across the dimensions across the towns? So again, a bit like, is there a gap between this sort of nirvana versus the reality on the ground?
First and foremost, the surprise was that the difficulty in getting data, that was tremendously difficult. So you might get details for a county, but not for a town, and then certainly not granular enough to help a town to promote itself or to see where the weaknesses are. So that was a real surprise. A second surprise was how important that horizontal integration piece is. We know around the country that county councils are doing great work in bringing stakeholders together, as are chambers of commerce and so on. But it's so important that they work together, and the impact that they can make when business responds to what's needed locally. It's amazing how that pushes you out that kind of digital effectiveness score. It really is a cumulative effect. So having that plan in place, doing things in a structured way that meet the local needs is really, really good. So in relation to the 5 towns then, so we wanted to see if the model worked in different scenarios. So what if you were a tourist town? Or what if you were a commuter town, let's say like Gorey is just outside Dublin, where your needs are very, very different maybe to a rural town, where you have a lot of your townspeople that are commuting to and from Dublin, and maybe don't want that long commute and maybe want to stay and work from home. So we took each of the towns then to be representative, if you like, of the towns of Ireland. And taking Buncrana, as a border town, and what's the impact of being effectively next door to another jurisdiction, and what are the cross-border type of implications, be it currency or shopping across borders, across different currency unions and so on.
Super. We'll take one more question, and I'm going to sort of put two together in a way. One is just around the data, and I don't know if would you be aware if there's any attempt to kind of collect the data using other mechanisms, such as somebody suggesting the CSO might collect some data, or using big data and stuff like that to suck up some data. I know that the team did a little bit of that. And I suppose a separate question, but I'll just throw it in at the same time. There's 8 dimensions. Just in terms of thinking about the towns you've looked at already, is the process to sort of attack the sort of 8 dimensions simultaneously, or is there some sort of sequencing or prioritization across them?
So not really. I think the beauty of the framework as designed is that it allows flexibility. So a tourist town will have very different needs to a town that's a satellite town, and they may not care about being up that dimension in terms of the score for tourism, but they certainly care about connectivity and integration and other factors like education and so on. So as a town chooses or identifies its goals, it's effectively saying, what does my footprint look like? And what towns am I comparing myself to? If you're Gorey, you might be comparing yourself to Dundalk or Drogheda and saying, how come they got that last foreign direct investment into Dundalk? How come we didn't get it in Gorey? Surely we meet some of those criteria as well. So in time, Colmit will allow benchmarking, which is very positive. And your questioner is right. There is data available from the government agencies like the CSO, from Comreg, the Ordnance Survey, but they're not brought together in any coherent way that, let's say, an ordinary citizen of a town can access in a user-friendly way. So we're looking for inspiration to places like Scotland and Wales, where they have interactive maps. And if you click on a town, you can see a lot of data about that town. And one of our speakers in Sligo was Phil Prentice, and he was very much involved in that initiative to get a greater understanding of Scottish places.
Super. That's great. Thank you, David. That's great. And thanks for taking the questions now and for the presentation. And you did a very good job of promoting DCU along the way as well. So thanks for that as well. I was a little bit involved in the project as well. So pleased to hear all the nice positivity around it. So thanks. We'll move to our second presentation. And I suppose David has set this up a little bit for them because we're going to hear about a town now and a digital town and a town that's sort of an exemplar in an Irish context. So I'll pass over to Amanda and Michael.
Thank you very much, Colin. So yes, Gorey, a digital town. I'm not sure if that's a statement, a question, an aspiration, and I suppose in reality it's all three. So in terms of what we'd like to do, Michael and myself, we really want to go through just what we feel were some of the enablers that have helped us on our digital journey. Looking at Wexford County Council's economic and community development programme, some of the key drivers that are unique to Gorey itself, specific projects then that have emerged, particularly from our from being chosen as a digital town, and initiatives that emerged from that, and just some conclusions then and some thoughts, I suppose, that we'd like to leave with you. These factors, of course, may not be present in every area, or they may not even be relevant, but I think they worked for us and had an important part to play, and we'd like to go through them with you. In terms then of Wexford County Council's role, the role of local authorities is always evolving. I joined Wexford County Council myself as community and enterprise development worker in 2001. And at that stage, the council's work in community and economic development was, I suppose, novel, in one sense, whereas now it's been mainstreamed into almost everything that we do. And indeed, there's greater recognition of, I think, the role that local authorities can play in this area. And that's something that David would have alluded to there in his presentation. So if we fast forward a little then to maybe 2013, we had new government policies such as putting people first. What that brought about was about the amalgamation of the local enterprise offices with the local authorities. So a much stronger focus on economic development, and again, being able to bring those various strands together, such as planning, land solutions, enterprise supports. We also had the development of the municipal districts, again about bringing decision making closer to the citizen. And we also had the development of the local community development committees and local economic and community plans. So there was a very solid research basis for that. Reports, I suppose, which are of particular value to us was the AERO report, which was commissioned with the unit there in Maynooth. That gives very detailed socio-economic profiles of the county. Another interesting piece of work was done with listening and future analytics, just to look in terms of commercial property availability, market leasing rates and so forth. So I suppose the research threw up some findings, many of which we were already aware of, but when they were put together, I suppose they were quite stark. Wexford at that point in time was the third most disadvantaged county in the state, higher than average levels of unemployment within the county, historically a high dependence on the construction sector, a higher dependence on lower paid professions and industries, agriculture, wholesale, retail. This would be particular to Gorey as well. Wexford with a lower than average level of large employers and a growing dependence on the greater Dublin area for employment. In terms of commercial property, we found that there was little or no quality office space available, and equally dearth of manufacturing facilities in the county, while rates themselves were at such a level that it was deterring private and speculative investment. So I suppose this is where the local authority had to step in and become a driver of these initiatives that were going to attract more wealth and value for the county. This map is particularly interesting. It shows in terms of people employed in ICT and professional services, where they live as opposed to where they work. And the obvious conclusion being there that a significant percentage of them are working outside the county. Again, this would link back to Gorey as well as a commuter town. So in terms of Wexford County Council's solutions then, and what we did to try address some of these deficits, we had a substantial programme of economic promotion for the county. That's evidenced, I suppose, across the various websites and other platforms. You'll find quite a bit of information there. A significant programme then of enterprise investment in core infrastructure. That would also include tourism development. We have a number of flagship projects there, and again, there's further information available on those. A strong focus on business networking and support, and identifying champions that could promote the county in realms and spheres that our staff or elected members wouldn't be active or engaged in. And also emphasis on research and innovation. So we're particularly pleased to work with DCU and the Esmond Street project. That's very important to us. In terms of innovation, we've got a very interesting project with Waterford Wexford ETB in terms of NZEB. It's a centre of excellence for construction and bringing sustainability into that picture. So there we were marrying what's a traditional, I suppose, occupational occupation in Wexford, the construction sector, with high-end technology. And I think in years to come, that's going to be a very important project for the county. Again, a very active local enterprise office, working across a range of initiatives and with a number of stakeholders. Just in terms of the visuals here, in the top right, we have the Scorty Technology Park. The montage underneath the first of those buildings will go to construction shortly. Below that again, we have the Advanced Factory, which will go to construction this year in New Ross. And then the other project on the waterfront there in the quay in Wexford is Trinity Wharf, our flagship project for the county, which will be a mixture of commercial space, residential, cultural and retail. The last picture there is of the Hatch Lab in Gorey. So that takes us, I suppose, directly on to our next slide then, and the town in question, the chosen one as such. I suppose Gorey as a town always had a very strong identity and sense of self. Its heritage is quite unique in that it's one of the few planted towns outside of the Pale, a strong rural and farming hinterland, but yet relatively little manufacturing. During the Celtic Tiger, the population increased significantly with the building boom, and Frank MacDonald in particular would have written a number of scathing articles, not without a grain of truth. But I suppose moving on 20 years later, the infrastructure deficits of the time, we have caught up with those in terms of education, sporting facilities, amenities and all the rest. And I think for where we are now, we've got a very vibrant and diverse population that really adds to the energy of the whole town. We have the second largest second level school in Ireland. We have a third school that will open in Gorey in September to meet demand. Also a very active drama and cultural scene. I suppose coming down really to a unique set of talented and creative people that really have a lot to offer. The population is around 45,000. Gorey town itself has a population of circa 10,000. 73% of those households have broadband. And you can see there are approximately 100,000 graduates with a third level degree living within an hour of Gorey. The report here that was commissioned by our local enterprise board is particularly interesting and goes into some of those statistics in more detail. And it's really, I suppose, providing information for would-be businesses in terms of locating in Gorey and the talent pool that would be available to them. So in terms of key drivers for Gorey itself, one of the first initiatives that was delivered as part of our economic and community development programme was the Hatch Lab in Gorey. Now, the Hatch Lab is located in the M11 Business Park. The building you see here is one of 3 buildings. The remaining 2 will be built over time, but developed by the Redmond Brothers Construction. Wexford County Council have a long-term lease on the building. We have a business manager there who runs the Hatch Lab. It has attracted in 2 IDA companies, GrandPad and CSC Financial Services. We have 4 Enterprise Ireland high potential startups based there, and we have the numbers vary, I suppose, on and off, but we have up to 35 small startup companies then working from the Hatch Lab. Now, obviously under COVID restrictions, there's use of the centre is limited at the moment, but we do envisage that once those restrictions are lifted, we'll have a higher uptake in terms of small companies moving in, but also people just wishing to use the facilities whilst they're working remotely. Other drivers that I think are in some sense a little unique to Gorey. In Gorey, we have our civic offices and our libraries located alongside. One of my former colleagues, the county librarian, Nuala Hanrahan, had this marvellous quote that the library should be the sitting room of the city. And that's very much what Gorey Library has provided for the town. And equally, I think it's fair to say our own staff in the municipal district offices, that we've created very much an open door where individuals, groups who had an idea, had a project, an initiative they wanted developed, can come in, get support, get signposted to where there might be funding available, but that the space is there for them to use and make the most of. It's also on a one-stop shop type complex where we have the ETB, the court services and the HSE alongside. The creativity piece is very important. There's quite a number of nationally and internationally known artists, sculptors, writers from the Gorey area. The link here, I won't take the time to show it now, but it's a very interesting little piece we did. We had a problem with abuse of disabled parking spaces in the town. So we teamed up with Gorey's School of Art and our own IT section, and developed a text alert system, and they helped us with some of the publicity around that. So a simple initiative, but an example of the type of partnerships that we have been developing in the town from the very start. We have a really engaged community on every level. The snapshot here is an amazing Spanish lady, Maite Gonzalez, doing her digital literacy course with seniors in Gorey Library. And we have replicated that initiative in a number of different areas. Love Gorey then is our town website that was developed in 2011. It's a subscription-based model, but it captures community activity. It allows businesses a platform to promote their retail offerings. And we would have done quite a lot of work with the subscriber businesses around it. And this led in then to further work that was done by IE Domains. But it did point out at the time, I suppose, because Gorey as a town was doing particularly well, business was very good, there was perhaps less of an appetite to embrace what digital technology had to offer. The same kind of hunger wasn't there. So it's been very interesting in terms of COVID, how we have kind of leaped forward, which at a pace which we may not have necessarily if that hadn't happened. I suppose other key champions then would be our Chamber of Commerce and our local enterprise officer. And again, David would have made that point of the importance of bringing the various stakeholders together. So in terms of just some key images here, Gorey is a great town for people to come together to meet, fabulous cafe culture. The other image here is our Workplace Matters section in Gorey Library. And again, we would run a lot of courses, initiatives, supports from that. The girl in the bottom left there, that's Nisha Hennessy. She won the Texaco art competition in 2019. If we trace back, I think we have a higher percentage or number of winners than any town in Ireland. So again, just tapping into a little bit to the creativity and talent within the town. I would have mentioned previously as well, a really strong retail town. Some of our retailers would have been, I think, among the first in the country to really embrace social media and the marketing potential within it. What's interesting about that, and I suppose it has a bearing from a local authority perspective as well, is that probably one of our lead retailers, and Michael will come to this later on, who would have been based in Esmond Street, has moved her business now totally online. So I suppose that comes back to the need for a local authority to be able to marry the placemaking with the digital technology so that we can offer people everything they need as opposed to, I guess, half the solution. So we were delighted then to be chosen by IE Domains as the first digital town. Some of the points David would have alluded to there, I suppose, helped them in making that decision in terms of critical mass, the support from the stakeholders, and as much as anything, I think the vibrancy of the town and also the fact that the Hatch Lab was in place. Some of the learning that we gained from that was that many of our businesses, and indeed ourselves as a local authority, still had a distance to travel. And the little snapshot on the screen there shows some of the online services, and that's an area that we've done a lot of work on, following on from that. And I also believe it's been excellent preparation for COVID-19 because it started more businesses thinking about what they needed to do to fully embrace what digital technology had to offer. So it left them, but no doubt in my mind, better prepared. And I'd like to sincerely thank David and the team for that, and indeed the many other benefits that we gained from the programme. So I'll hand over to my colleague now, Michael Drea, who will go into a little bit more detail on the specific projects on the ground.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, so Amanda has set the scene for Gorey and our interaction with IE Domains. And I suppose that was critical, we believe, for the town, and we were trying to, I suppose we're trying to build on the capacity that was identified and enhance the offering of the town under the 8 different, I suppose, the 8 different strands that David identified earlier. So back IEDR carried out a digital town readiness assessment, As previously mentioned, that was undertaken by the IIDB in DCU and Pier Angelo Rosati and Dr. Theo Lynn. And that found that 95% of businesses in the Gorey area have an online presence. Whilst there was a strong online presence, it didn't really translate into, I suppose, really significant online presence. There was a lack of online selling or cloud computing. So to build on that, we've engaged with DCU and we've rolled out the first tranche of digital marketing audit of companies and businesses within the town. So we've rolled out 30 digital marketing audits just before Christmas, and they're being undertaken with the individual companies. And the idea is that they will be benchmarked against best practice and European norms, and recommendations will be issued to those businesses, companies, and they will then build on that and enhance their offering with the use of online trading vouchers from their local enterprise office or innovation vouchers from Enterprise Ireland. I just move to the next slide. I don't appear to have control.
Michael, if you just click your screen.
Oh, yes, sorry. So Amanda's already mentioned Esmond Street, and people may be familiar with it. It's affectionately known as Boutique Boulevard for the, I suppose, very unusually for a very high number of independently owned high-end boutiques offering a very strong retail offering. However, as you can see from the picture in the bottom right, the streetscape itself doesn't reflect the offering, the high-end offering of the retailers. Serious issue with, overhead wires, accessibility is an issue on the street. So whilst for years we've been lauding Esmond Street as, Boutique Boulevard, it became very apparent with the move of one or two businesses online and losing their presence on the street that we needed to offer more to, I suppose, enhance that area and to ensure that Esmond Street remained a vibrant retail destination. Esmond Street also has the Gorey Community School located on it, which is the largest secondary school in Ireland. So I suppose in conjunction with the Irish Institute of Digital Business, we set a very lofty ambition to redevelop the public realm on Esmond Street and Esmond Lane into Europe's most innovative rural street where visitors can experience a physical and a digital public realm. IIDB drafted a digital strategy for the development of Esmond Street. So for local authorities, I suppose traditionally, we would be very comfortable in the physical delivery of infrastructure. But this obviously, we had to marry physical infrastructure with cyber physical, and that's where the collaboration with DCU came from and why it was so important for us. So as part of our overall regeneration program for Esmond Street, we're going to include in the public realm, we're going to include smart street furniture, such as smart benches, smart lampposts, where we can, built-in GPS, Wi-Fi, telecommunications antennas, CCTV, smart chargers. So it will just, we'll ground all our overhead cables, and this will build then on less clutter, I suppose, higher impact infrastructure. So there will be many strands to it. The public realm, mobility, we'll be looking at smart parking management, real-time information about parking available on the street and in that area. We're going to introduce an autonomous vehicle corridor on Esmond Street Lane that will allow companies to demonstrate and test autonomous technology there, and maybe test the use of drone deliveries and technology such as that. We're also very keen to look at sustainability aspect. So part of that is we'll be putting in some PaveGen walkway, which basically generates footsteps. You'll see the images below. It generates energy from footsteps, and that energy can be used to, to power the smart benches and the charging units and the various pieces of infrastructure on the street. We'll also have a solar powered walkway, which is essentially a pavement that interacts with the citizen. And as you'll see below, you have children playing games on the pavement. So it offers just an opportunity to engage with the people on the street. And obviously, hybrid and electric cars, that's the way things are moving. So we will be keen to incorporate the latest technology there to facilitate smart charging points. So digital retail improvements, we'll be looking at hyper-local geofencing, which will give the opportunity to send out relevant messages to people as they enter Esmond Street. It will give them updates on whatever we see as a relevant message in relation to the businesses on that street. And I suppose it's all managing the flow of a town and how people interact with their town. We're looking at the rollout of e-commerce enabled on-street kiosks and an unmanned cloud-based intelligent delivery and collection point. So on the digital side of things, we're looking at connectivity corridor to provide free Wi-Fi on the street, and for testing and demonstrating next generation access technologies. I suppose big data is something that we see a lot of value in, and that is something that we would look to be able to track data and make data available to researchers to see how the street operates and how the citizens interact with the street. So the social infrastructure, one of the things that I'm most excited about is the prospect of Esmond Street Smart Lab and Test Bed, which would be a collaboration with DCU. And it will be an internationally recognized living lab in Gorey. So we will essentially have a space where we can offer to companies, if they want to roll out or test technology, that we will offer them a space where they can come and use it, and they can interact with the people of the town. And again, as previously mentioned, we have the largest secondary school at the end of that street with about 1,700 students there, and that will offer companies an opportunity to interact with those students as well. So again, we look towards Smart Street outreach programs, including on-street smartphone accessible content, and we'll organize events around that as well. So I suppose from our perspective, maybe the question is, why aren't we just putting in new footpaths and resurfacing the road? We would see it as though with the move to online, retail certainly needs, it needs to be more experiential. And we want to try and develop Esmond Street as a more experiential destination where people will go there, not just for the retail, but because the street is unique and it's something that they can interact with. And we also see the financial benefits of it. I mean, some of the headline figures out of our research that was undertaken with DCU is, over the first 5 years of the project, we would see it delivering 28 full-time jobs, 78 person years of research and innovation, 3.7 million in additional tourism spend, and 53,000 additional visitors to Gorey. So all the metrics really point in the direction that this is the right thing to do, and this is something that hopefully, when we roll this out for Esmond Street, hopefully it's something that nationally and certainly across County Wexford that we can build on and roll out the best learnings from this project across other locations. I'll hand you back to Amanda now for some thoughts, some closing thoughts on it.
Thank you, Michael. I had forgotten about that slide. Really, just to sum up, I would believe, and Michael is of the same view, that the important piece here is the collaborations, is the relationships that you can develop with your stakeholders, and the importance really of positivity and supporting ideas, supporting individuals and community groups that want to progress the town. That's something that we've done from the very start and will continue to do. And we're really delighted with the Esmond Street project and working hard to bring it to fruition. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Michael. A bit tight for time, but just maybe one question, and it's just around what you were saying there, and it's a general and a specific element to it. I suppose you outlined a lot of sort of what the council is doing in terms of, major infrastructure in terms of the development of office space and factory space and things like that, and even the Edmund project. So, and I'm just wondering, has there been any positive impact from that into other areas, like that David was suggesting, in terms of schools or doctors and other sort of aspects becoming or embracing more digital? That's one. And I suppose, has there been any positive effects in terms of drawing out more community engagement? So is there any bottom up sort of bubbling, pushing digital type of initiatives? And then I suppose the specific then, just is there any negative effects for you? And this is, somebody's curious in the sense of, if businesses start moving online, is there commercial rates hit for the council, as basic as that? So just maybe a quick answer. Thanks.
Okay, so I suppose in terms of your last point, it's very important that our towns aren't just about retail, that they're spaces where people live, where they interact, and each of those will bring a revenue stream. So this can't be just about commercial rates. Like the online piece will generate an income stream in time too. So like we have to work with all of that. The other point, you made in terms of bottom-up initiatives in the community. We've had funding streams like town and villages that have enabled a lot of our community, not a lot, but sorry, certainly a few key community groups to put in remote working hubs. That's linked in then with a broadband scheme. We have 10 community facilities across the county now that have it's free broadband basically for 2 to 3 years. So that will facilitate the remote working piece as well. We want to do more of that. And sorry, the first point you made, Colin.
Well, it's just, yeah, has the demonstration effect from, you know, all these initiatives, have other sectors, maybe like the local schools or local GPs and things like that, become, you know, they're part of the dimensions on David's framework. Have they embraced more digital?
Yes, they certainly have. But again, to point back to, I think COVID has been an important driver of that, because it has necessitated people no longer have a choice. And now that they've actually experienced it and know they can do it, they won't go back.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Michael. That was very interesting.
Thank you, Paul.
So we'll move to our third and final presentation for this session. So we have Grainne O'Keefe, who's CEO of Ludgate, and she's down in Skibbereen. Well, Ludgate's in Skibbereen, okay?
Exactly.
So pass over to you, Grainne. Thanks.
Thanks, guys, for inviting me to speak to everybody here today. I've been very inspired, I have to say, by my co-speakers here with what's been happening in Gorey and what David was saying about the Digital Town competition. So I'm already firing my team up to begin the work for that. I suppose my story will really look at the Ludgate Hub and the story of that. And I think David touched on the proliferation of hubs that have appeared on the national landscape. And I'm going to go back a little bit in time and talk you through where we were 5 years ago and how we've come to where we are today. And I think the common theme, I suppose, out of everybody here is the value of digitization. And COVID has accelerated the move to digitization by a factor of decades. And even most recently, the group CEO of Vodafone at a symposium in the LSE last week also was reiterating this value of connectivity, connecting communities, and bridging the gap between urban and rural, bridging the gap between developed and developing countries. And he did use Ludgate and Skibbereen as a case study to illustrate his point and what the value of that connectivity has brought to a rural deprived community. So I'm just going to share my screen if I can do that. Just bear with me for a moment. And I will walk you through this deck, and this, as I say, will bring you through the Ludgate journey. So the little snapshot that I have here is our co-shared space. So essentially the Ludgate Hub, the physical building it's an old bakery that was refurbed into this very inviting co-shared space. And although we like to use the analogy that Ludgate is a movement rather than a hub, because it's much bigger than just the physical building, and it goes deeper and penetrates deeper into the community. So when David mentioned the national landscape of hubs, 5 years ago, if you looked at this snapshot, this national snapshot, there would have been very few hubs appearing on there. Most of them appearing in urban settings, and over the last 3 to 5 years, and certainly Ludgate would have influenced government strategy and other towns doing it from a grassroots perspective. We've seen this proliferation. So on the West Coast, we have the Atlantic Economic Corridor, which has emerged out of the Western Development Commission. That is likely to have a national remit in the coming months. I think Heather Humphreys has a lot to say on that in the coming weeks. Then you have the ITHN, which is the Irish Technology Hub Network, of which Ludgate is a part of, and that hub network focuses very much on innovation. There will be national debate as well on what the different kinds of hubs that are out there and what serves your needs. So Ludgate, we span multiple buckets there. You know, there's the community-driven hubs, there's the innovation, cutting-edge technology hubs, there's enterprise hubs, and I suppose in a rural setting, we need to play multiple roles, and we don't like to pigeonhole ourselves into any particular category there. We need to we need to be spread across those multiple categories. But it's really exciting because it does demonstrate the value proposition to local economies, local communities, because it's not just about creating jobs, it's also about enabling communities. So this is a nice little timeline of the Ludgate journey, where back, 2015, Ireland was just emerging from the financial crisis, the rural areas taking longer to recover from that financial crisis. And Skibbereen, through the decades, had struggled in that regard. And I actually was born in Skibbereen. I am a Skib girl, and my story is not unique in that once I left Skib after my leaving cert, I was gone into the ether for years. And most people don't come back. I came back a few years ago. I would have gone overseas for 20 years, New York, London. And that story, as I say, is not unique. The young people leave and they come back for the bank holiday weekends. And so local business people got together, and one person in particular, John Field, together with Sean O'Driscoll, who was another local man, but who had actually gone on to left and moved to Dublin. They came together and they said, how can we stop this? How can we resolve this? How can we create opportunities here for a thriving economy in Skibbereen? And they came up with this idea of a digital hub with fast connectivity. And at the time, Vodafone were together with ESB. They formed the joint venture with Zero, and they were looking at towns to implement their 1 gigabit. And we were very lucky beneficiaries of that. And that really turbo boosted us into this domain. And on the back of that 1 gigabit connectivity to Skibbereen and into the hub, we were then able to launch our program of events. So with that in mind, Gráinne Dwyer, who was my precursor in this role, she would have launched Digital Week, and that was ever before the Tech Summit, and Paddy Cosgrove, I think he actually got the idea from us. But we brought over 1,600 people to the town to launch Ludgate and to launch the Digital Week. Now, bearing in mind there's only 2,500 people living in the town, it was a pretty significant coup for us to be able to achieve that. Within a year, we had 55 active members in the Ludgate. So the space itself, it's 10,000 square foot space. It's like a townhouse. So we have a co-shared space, and then we have on the ground floor dedicated corporate offices. So that can range for companies for 10 to 15 people or 4 to 5 people. And then the co-shared space is for 35 people. And then we have a mezzanine level, which has an editing suite. And we call it the penthouse, but it's conference room, and we like the name penthouse. So the early years were, we achieved all of that through private philanthropy and pro bono work of our board, and I'll talk about our board in a minute. And we also started a seed fund where there was 500,000 made available for startups. So at the time, there was a bit of a heavy focus on startups. And then through the years, as we responded to what was happening organically, we now embrace, well, not that we didn't embrace them before, but it's a more inclusive world for startups, second sight strategies, solopreneurs, folks who previously worked in Dublin or London, and pre-COVID. They were responding to the goodwill of their company by allowing them work remotely. Obviously now with COVID, everybody can do that. And so we have every type of demographic in Ludgate, but we can accommodate up to 75 people. And by 2018, we actually had run out of space. So the space downstairs that I mentioned is for the corporates. That initially was event space. So we had Coda Dojo there. We launched the West Cork Women's Network and other types. It was Silver Surfer, teaching digital skills to the slightly older generation. And anyway, because we ran out of space, we had to repurpose it for corporates, because ultimately we need to generate sufficient revenue to pay our overheads or make some dent into it. And that will bring me to my strategy on where we're going in the next few years with doubling our square footage with Ludgate 2. But in 2018, we secured towns and villages funding for the first time. So I know Amanda talked to that point when she was talking about Gorey and Wexford County Council. We were very fortunate at that point that Cork County Council entered the equation of stakeholders, and we were able to refurb some of this, like that event, the space that was previously the event space then became corporate space. We had to do some construction capital work there. The editing suite emerged out of the funding from towns and villages, and the penthouse, just the comms and the setup there, that came out of that. And then in 2019, we were successful in our application for the Enterprise Ireland regional, the REDF fund, which we were awarded 2 million. Now that's an 80% fund, so you still have to find the 20%. But that essentially will allow us refurb the new building, 1.1 million toward that, and then the remaining 900,000 allowed us recruit additional people. So from 2015 to 2018, it was always a very small organization. It was a 2-person show, 2-person plus a board, and we'll go into detail on our board in a moment. And the REDF fund now allowed us expand our headcount to an additional 4 people to work for a fixed term contract for 3 years. So no sooner had that money begun to trickle in, COVID threw everything out the window, and you know, we had to close up there in March for a period. I suppose at this time, what we were able to do was collaborate very closely, and I think Amanda talked about stakeholder engagement. We would have active stakeholder engagement at a national and local government level, whether it's the Department of Rural Affairs, whether it's the Leo Varadkar's Department of Enterprise, Department of Education, Simon Harris's new department for third level and higher education and innovation. And it's crucial, I think, to our success to maintain those relationships as we go along. And certainly as we talk about, you know, the new hubs that are emerging, or the national broadband plan to roll out broadband to the, you know, the long tail of rural areas, and having those broadband, the BCPs, the broadband connection points, you know, we're playing a role there in, I suppose, arguably speaking, it's like a hub academy that we're helping deliver programs, just teaching them, or giving them our story, our journey, how to set up a hub and how to keep it going, because just because you've created it doesn't mean it's viable thereafter. So COVID changed everything. Obviously last year, we see a lot of seasonal traffic down in West Cork. You know, it is possibly one of the tourist capitals of Ireland. And we know with the staycations last summer, we saw massive volume of tourism coming our way. And we were able to maintain some business during the summer months. We were previously offering hot desks, but we had to modify that on the back of COVID and public health advice. And so hot desks weren't available, but 1 week rental was available. And so we found many of our members, our visitors, were staying longer. So it wasn't just a fleeting visit, it was a more prolonged visit. So the future really will be responding to COVID, responding to the needs of our local economy, not only helping enable new jobs, but also to preserve existing jobs. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about who our members are and who we'll be helping in that regard. So I know we're caught for time, so this is just a helpful framework to articulate the key points for how to set up a hub and how to run it thereafter. So I mentioned the strong leadership and the vision. Our board members have a lot of the who's who of corporate Ireland and education Ireland. So we have Anne O'Leary from Vodafone, who's been crucial, Sean O'Driscoll at Lentimplex and now chairman of ESRI, John Field, a local entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, John O'Halloran, the current interim president of UCC. In the early years, we had David Putnam, who was the first digital champion of Ireland, and he is, I suppose, a lifelong ambassador to us. He only lives down the road, really, and we're always talking to him and engaging with him. And he's a trusted advisor, really. So the list, we have 13 people on our board, and they're a very active board, and we're immensely grateful for all their support and help in that regard. We touched on stakeholder engagement already, crucial. So I sometimes feel my role is a marketing role, a politician role, an accountant role. I wear many different hats, and so depending on who I'm speaking to, will be influenced, I suppose, what we need to achieve collaboratively together. And you know, we've local government, national government, the other hubs in the region, the other hubs at a national level, and helping, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's our goal. I firmly believe in the power of collaboration rather than competition. Funding is always at the center of my waking moments, and sometimes keeping me awake as well at night. You know, we earn revenue from desk rental, but obviously we haven't been able to rent that many desks since last March. We have secured funding for the next, you know, we got it in 2019. That will run out after a 3-year period. It'll probably extend a tiny bit further just because of COVID. But I'm always thinking about how I can secure funding, whether it's through grants, whether it's through philanthropy, whether it's through sponsorship. AIB is our primary corporate sponsor, and they've played a very active role in here in our journey as well. Service users, I'll talk to you in a moment about our service users who we tend to see coming into our hub. I think scale is important as well, scaling to their needs, scaling to our needs. And that, you know, is very closely aligned to the space. We ran out of space very quickly, and we're very excited about the refurbing of, it's actually my old secondary school at Mercy Heights, and that we are refurbing. It's going through the planning permission process at the moment, and we hope to commence that hopefully in time with building regulations lifting with level 5. The services that we offer, you know, obviously there's the desk rental, the room rental, the conference rental, but we also do a lot of mentoring. We have a mentoring program, a coaching program, and there's a huge amount of networking opportunities. And we're finding there's a lot of employment opportunities that emerge from that networking. So, you know, you might have a bigger organization that has a need for digital marketing skills, and that digital marketing consultant is operating out of Ludgate. And so, and especially with the seasonal traffic that we see in the summer, a lot of relationships come from that too. In terms of our service users, I just mentioned digital marketing, but we have found through data analysis, over 30% of our members and regular users, over 30% of them come from the creative industries. And that comes from, you know, the purest film producer to the more commercially minded website developers, digital marketing skills. And that's a demographic that I really want to tailor my strategy towards helping them recover from COVID, as well as all my service users going forward. The skills in running a hub, I mentioned there, I tend to play very, you know, different hats. Am I an accountant? Am I a politician? Am I a marketer? Am I business development? And when you're in a small team of 2 people, now growing to 4 to 5 people, there is everybody steps in, but we also have to tap into pro bono expertise in the community, because we can't all fund that ourselves, or it can't be found no matter how amazing we might be. We do have to tap into some of the talent that's available locally, albeit in a pro bono contributed way. And I think sustainability talks to that element. You know, it's do we have enough money to pay for salaries? Do we have enough money to pay for the bills, the rates, and all, and the services that we want to offer? So our vision really is a thriving economy, a thriving local economy. And that's not, I suppose, an unusual vision, but the fact that we're rural just makes it a greater challenge. Just critical mass, resources, facilities, and we want to make sure that people can raise their families here, and children, you know, my children don't have to leave. We don't want them to have to be forced to leave, that there's an option to stay or an option to go if they so wish. And I mentioned that here, that remote working doesn't just offer workplace flexibility, it supports the global challenges such as the environment, cost of living, lifestyle, and diversity, and we want to create sustainable futures for our children. So our hub is actually a very inviting space, and it's conducive to that water cooler chat. Were we there at the moment? Fiber connectivity, I think, was crucial to how we've achieved what we have achieved. Why are we achieving it? Because we want local economies to thrive and prosper. And what are we doing? We want to be a trusted and experienced brand and be agile in our enablement of job creation. This is just a little snapshot of our board. Some of these are national figures and some of them are more local. But you can see Ronan Harris there from Google, Dee Forbes from RTE, Anna Leary from Vodafone, Brian McCarthy from Fexco. So, you know, yeah. This is the immediate team. Myself, Dara, who's my business development lead, Elma, who runs the hub, and Kieran is our education program manager. And we have a very ambitious program there, reaching out to the local schools. We've got 16 schools in our pilot program. And through COVID, we've actually been able to help them respond to the challenges and then be able to tap into some of the funding that's now available on the back of digital plans. So we're very much a trusted advisor in that sense. So this is our Ludgate hub down here, the green building. That's the original old bakery. Last September, we opened up individual offices. We've got 8 one-person or 2-person offices. And then this is Ludgate 2, Ludgate Enterprise, which, as I say, we're just going through planning permission at the moment. We've included Spearline in the snapshot there. Spearline is one of the success stories from Skibbereen. It started off as a small company above the credit union, outgrew their space, took on space in Ludgate, outgrew that space, and now they've bought the old boys De La Salle Secondary School, refurbed it, and now it's a very impressive building as you enter the town, and it's very uplifting and motivating to see that resurgence of economic power in the town on the back of that. A workplace of the future, essentially. I think COVID has made all of that, has helped explain how that makes perfect sense. West Cork, once West Cork is in your blood, it never leaves, which is why I was overseas for 20 years and had to come back. Yeah, look, I feel very lucky to be part of the Ludgate story. These are just a couple of examples of the companies that are here. We have Excelco, which is an e-commerce company. We've Travel Master, which to be fair, is struggling through COVID, but we know that they will come back bigger and better on the back of the time that they're now spending on technology optimization. Six West is an aircraft operator. They have their finance division here, and Teamworks have a presence here as well. Then I mentioned our 30% members who are coming from the creative industry, and we have an editing suite that accommodates their needs. We have an artist in residence program, which emerged out of a partnership with Business to Arts. We run a host of events on a monthly basis. Now they're all virtual, of course, and we've had to scramble to learn those skills ourselves. Previously, they would have been kind of physical or on-prem. I mentioned our schools program, which caters for things like the Code Dojo, Code Like a Girl, helping them with their digital plans, digital literacy. We've rolled out Google for Educate, and we've also helped secure 150 devices, some of which were brand new, some of which were refurbed, and we've helped distribute those to the local schools on the back of some of the challenges they've faced for COVID. Ultimately, our goal is to help deliver 21st century skills in partnership with the schools. But it's fair to say for the past year, we've been focusing on helping them get through the COVID journey. I know we're cut for time, so I'm just going to really fast track through the rest of it. We would have run an incubator program for social enterprises 2 years ago, and we would hope to we partner with Social Impact for those types of initiatives. We've helped facilitate our Code Dojo kids. I mentioned the Girls Coding Week, and there were 28 girls in the region who've benefited from that. 16 primary schools in the vicinity. Some of them are in the town, but some of them are rural schools, you know, with only 2-person teachers, 3-person teachers. So I think it's fantastic that we've been able to contribute to their journey. We also run TY programs and Silver Surfer digital skills. And on the back of our experience, we have either visited or have enabled visits to Ludgate, or have gone on conferences like this, talking them through our journey and giving them guidance on how to set up and run the hubs. So I mentioned all the different skills that are needed to run a hub, and you can see there it's very diverse and all-inclusive, and that's why we have to tap into our local community to contribute when it can't be found within the 2-person team or the 4-person team. A brief look here at the income and expenditure. Income is on the left side, desk and room rental, the business supports and the training programs, and then the overhead expenditure side, the staffing, the rent and rates, the lighting and heating, the legal, and of course the marketing and the promotion side of things. We do get a lot of high-profile visitors. So you can see we were very fortunate to have Michael D visit us a few years ago, and that was a very exciting event for us to be part of. So we mentioned about our partners and our stakeholders. This is just a little snapshot of some of the corporates that we've been partnering with through the years and have been beneficiaries of their support. So that's the snapshot. I know we were very pressed for time, so I did try and accelerate a little there. Sorry, Colin.
No, you did very well. Thanks, Grainne. And your visuals are lovely, and your website looks really good as well. If anybody wants to have a look at that as well, you'd have everybody moving down to you. So you might be a victim of your own success one of these days.
We welcome everybody. And I'll be honest, we actually have our marketing placement student from NTU or CIT with us, who's really helped us in this regard, because we didn't have those skills before. So she's really helped us in that regard.
Before we finish, just time for a couple of quick questions for you. Just one, obviously you've outlined your success in terms of building the hub and the other physical locations, and they obviously have a revenue stream associated with them. Can you just talk a little bit about the challenges around sort of your understanding of the community aspect? You sort of spoke of building a gigabit community and a movement and things like that. Is that sort of based around the town, the location, or is it around digital, or is it around sort of, the skills in the school sort of thing? So what ties the community
because
thing?
We're a rural town, we actually we partner with many different community members. So we partner with the local Chamber of Commerce, and a few years ago, before anybody was moving online, we had E Street. I don't know if any of you remember E Street, where it was kind of the beginning of going online, right? But Gillian, who ran it for Ludgate, once she left, her knowledge left with her, and unfortunately we weren't able to necessarily sustain that. Now E Street has become a little outdated already, even though it was only 3 or 4 years ago that we ran that program. And this is why the skills of your student body here are tremendous in this regard, because if we look at our town, and if you take, one of the examples in the town is the local toy store, who are on E Street, but for that to work effectively and for you to see their full inventory list, you'd need to have it automated and digitized. And if you're in a toy store with, the cows and the cars and it's a huge inventory list, right? It's you'd nearly need the engine room of a Super Value behind it to be able to get that up on online. So a lot of the community members would have had a Facebook presence, and then they moved to click and collect, but now you can't do click and collect anymore in this current lockdown. So we're really feeling their pain, but because we're so limited in the resources that we have available, we can observe the gaps that are there, and we're trying to be agile and creative in how we can solve for that. So I have another, the marketing students from, I suppose, CIT that are from the region. We've been trying to bring them into the fold to help us to figure out how we can close out those gaps. And ultimately, I would love the whole town, all the retailers in the town, to be able to have that e-commerce facility online. But it's great to have the concept, but it's the delivery and implementation of it that's very challenging. And so I loved what I heard earlier with David and partnering with DCU to do that assessment. Actually, is the starting point of it all. So if you don't know where you are today, how do you know where you want to go in the future? So yeah, that's the retailers. Then with the schools, I mentioned about the 16 schools and the 3 secondary schools. We have a very active program with those guys. And then the corporates, we run like CPD programs, like our events typically try and touch on topics that can benefit them. So whether it's search engine optimization, we'd get guest speakers in talking to things like that.
Super. And just a follow-on question, Amanda and Michael sort of gave, I suppose, a story of Gorey, and given where they were coming from, it had a strong emphasis around the role of the council in terms of the initiative. Your story is different in the sense of it's private sector led initially. Obviously, it's drawing down government funding through schemes. So I suppose a double question: is there difficulty in terms of a private sector initiative in sort of keeping everybody on the side?
We're a social enterprise. So while it did emerge out of the philanthropy of private sector, our legal status is a social enterprise status. I think in a rural area, to be economically viable, as a private entity would be huge, wouldn't actually be viable. So social enterprise is the only means to do this. So we are all about the community, whether it's, as I say, the Silver Surfers, the schools, the retailers, the corporate organizations. We want to be able to facilitate all of those user groups. And we do have a very strong relationship with the County Council now. I mean, it started off as private, but now it's a very collaborative one with the County Council. Yeah, there's a very close relationship there.
Yeah, and I suppose just to finish, any sense, given you mentioned COVID a few times, has there been increased interest in terms of second site strategies and things like that from corporates, or is that sort of a wait and see spot?
I think it's a wait and see. Yeah, I think this whole distributed workforce, the hybrid model, I think that's what's going to emerge. I think it could be employee-led rather than employer-led. When it's employee-led, you know, they'll arrive down to West Cork, but I do think a collaborative power of the hubs as a network, there's no reason why that conversation and negotiation can't be had as a collaborative group with the corporates, especially the multinationals of the enterprise organization. Like the second site strategies that we have are very much for scaling companies as opposed to the larger organizations. I think there's room for all of these hubs to play a role in those strategies.
Super exciting times ahead for you, I think. So thanks very much, Grainne. So again, a virtual applause. Thanks for everybody for attending. I'll just do a quick wrap up. So thanks to David, Amanda, Michael and Grainne for their presentations. I think they gave us a good perspective into sort of the challenges and the opportunities around digital in sort of rural and town settings, and it is an exciting space. As you may know, we have 3 more sessions this week, one on Friday, one on Thursday, and one on Wednesday. On Friday, we're finishing with, I'll just give you a quick run through who's going to talk. On Friday, we have Robert Sanders of IRISS. On Thursday, we have Tiernan Mines, CEO and co-founders of Hello Lamppost. Neil Cunningham, CEO at Civic Group, and Juan Sabada, who's assistant professor in architectural and urban design, and Noam Burson, brand and agencies partnership at Pavagen. So that's Thursday. That's a big attendance. And in terms of tomorrow, Wednesday, we have David Zambrana and Leon Nielsen of Cirque and Dirk Allers of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And tomorrow's one is also part for anybody who knows of our Sustainable Development Goals SDG 4B series as well. So you're most welcome to join us any or for all of those sessions during the week. And I'll just finish again just by thanking our presenters today for taking the time putting together their presentations and engaging with us. Really enjoyed it and I kind of learned a lot. So thanks very much to you. Okay, thanks everyone.